All right, cool. So we're already in opportunities. I'm going to hop over to all opportunities just because I find that easy. It's a list view, so I'm looking for a specific one to jump into as an example. I'm just going to go ahead and choose. I'm using my Cinderella buyer opportunity for this because I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that usually come up on the buy side, but can be translated for pretty much any other document, but I find it easier to explain this way. So we're already in our opportunity, and we're going to hop over to documents. And I'm going to go straight to the DocuSign room that's already been created for this. So I'm going to hit Go to Transaction. And in a new tab, it's opening up for me the transaction room that's already been started. I already have documents in here. If this was brand new, there wouldn't be anything in here, but I already have all my buy-side documents in here. The first thing we're going to go over, and we went over this in orientation, and we've gone over this in other trainings, the importance of the Details tab. So the Details tab is where you should really start if you're trying to fill out any new documents. Every time you go in your room and you're going to add in something else, start in the Details tab first to just see if there's any of these boxes that, like the offer details is going to autofill the agreement of sale. See if there's any of these boxes that will help you autofill your documents. So everything on the left side, so room information 2, location, offer details, high bid confirmation, closing details, all of this on the left side is going to be what autofills your documents. Everything on the right, where seller 1, seller 2, listing agent 1, listing agent 2, buyer 1, buyer 2, buying agent 1, buying agent 2, all of that. Those are your people. That also autofills on your documents, but it makes it so that their email is attached to it's most important for your clients or anyone that you're trying to send for signatures, because if you fill it out in the Details tab, your people, you'll be able to access them later to send things for signature. So just figured I'd start with that reminder. The Details tab, really important, start there. Okay, so let's hop over to documents. All right, documents. Strange thing about DocuSign, and it actually ends up working out, is that when you add your documents, so I had already gone in and added in my whole buyer side sale folder. Once you add any of these documents, you can't add it in again. So you can't duplicate it. If you try to, like some of these, they might have even gotten rid of the option. Excuse me. Copy, there we go. If you try to make a copy of any of your documents, it's going to give you an error message to say that you can't copy it. And that's because in some other states, it's against the board's rules or the state's rules for being, like, it can be non-compliant. So it means for us too that we can't make copies of the documents. That's okay, because this version of the document that's added in that has this blue form next to it is going to be the one that's always going to be editable no matter how many times you send it out for signatures. A great example is the agreement of sale. We're sending out multiple offers. We're reusing this blue form agreement of sale, the one with the little blue form icon. We're reusing that for every single offer. So it can be a little bit confusing, especially if we're used to dot loop, because we're used to just adding in a new one, right? And I'll show you what it looks like. Like, we'll use the agreement of sale as an example. So if I try to add in, like, I filled out that agreement of sale, now I want to try to add in a brand new one because I want to start over. See how all of these, oh, that one's a new one. See how all of these are grayed out? Means that you can't add in a second copy of it. So if it's already in here, you can't do it again. So you're just reusing that same one. The difference is that once you get signatures on it, you get a second version added into your transaction room. That's a flat PDF that has the signatures on it. And that basically prevents you deleting signatures ever. Because with dot loop, it would be, if I tried to make a change to a document, then it would delete off all the signatures. DocuSign doesn't do that because the signatures aren't attached to this form version, really. It's only after it's fully signed, you get a PDF. So that's the second tip. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and use, because this question comes up a lot, I'm going to use the agreement of sale as an example. Because there's some tips for mastering sending this out that's going to make your life a little bit easier. So we're just going to single that out and just use that one. So I'm just checking off my agreement of sale, and I'm going to hit this little pen at the top where it says DocuSign to create a brand new envelope. Okay, so I'm creating my envelope. You want to make sure that you give your envelope a name, and you're going to name it what you're sending them. So if this is offer for 123 Enchanted Lane, then that's what we're going to put. In this scenario where we're creating an envelope with like offer paperwork, we want to make sure that we're naming the envelope what property the offer is for. If it was a listing, we don't necessarily have to put the address because it's all in the same transaction room. The address is the same for all of it. But for a buyer, if I'm sending out the agreement of sale, I'm naming the envelope what the offer is for, so that if that falls through and we do this again, you're going to be able to differentiate what you send and when. So we're going to want to give that envelope a name. It shows the documents that you're sending to them, and I singled out just the agreement of sale for this one. If you needed to add in another one, like a lead-based paint or something, we would hit room docs, and you can pull from everything that's already sitting in your room. So maybe we're adding in our deposit money notice or a couple other documents all at once. You can add in things that are already in your room in room docs. If you wanted to add a PDF, then you can hit more and upload it from your computer. So maybe an MLS sheet or a seller's disclosure. If you already have it and you want to add it in all at once, you can do that. Okay, so we're doing agreement of sale. We're assuming that I've already filled it out. We're going to hit add recipient, and every time that it says pre-tagged roles, you're going to choose pre-tagged roles. I'm going to show you a scenario later where you won't see pre-tagged roles. The only time that you won't. If you see pre-tagged roles, pick it. So pre-tagged roles is going to tell you, all right, in this agreement of sale, there's signature boxes for this list of people. That's what we're looking at right now. So we're singling out one document to make it really simple. So in the agreement of sale, there's a spot for buyer 1 to sign, buyer 2 to sign, buyer 3, seller 1, seller 2, and seller 3. We're only focusing on the people that we're sending it to right now. Of course, there's a seller, but we're not sending it to them right now, so we don't need to worry about it. So we're checking off buyer 1, and we're selecting who's going to be buyer 1. And then we're checking off buyer 2, and we're selecting over here who's going to be buyer 2. At that point, we're done. I just need my buyers to sign it, so we're just going to hit add selected. We went over this in orientation, but what you see here next to the left of the list is it says the number 1 right now, and it does default to that depending on how many people you add in. That's your signing order. So depending on the document, there may be scenarios where you want, like a good example is maybe buyer's financial information or the seller disclosure. Since only one person can fill that out, maybe you want to make it so that, buyer 1 gets it first or seller 1 gets it first, and only after they're done does the second person get it, so that they can see all the things the first person wrote. Because otherwise they won't, if they're signing it before the first person's finished filling it out, then they won't, it'll be kind of blank and they'll just fill out their signature boxes. They won't see what they wrote. So if that's important, that you want them to be able to see what somebody else filled out, then you would set a signing order. So we'll just show how to do that. Let's say that I'm going to send this offer to buyer 1 and buyer 2. I want buyer 2 to get it only after buyer 1's done. So Cinderella is going to sign it first. Only after she signed every box does Prince Charming get it. That's how the signing order works. If you do not want to set a signing order, you set everybody to 1 and they all get it at the same time. They can sign at the same time before each other. It doesn't matter. They all get it at once. Okay. Over here, you have an option that says needs to sign, needs to view, receives a copy, or specify recipient. Needs to sign is all encompassing. It's not, Loop used to have to do, it was like needs to sign or needs to fill and sign if they need to fill something out. DocuSign doesn't do that. If it says needs to sign, it means needs to do anything that's assigned to them, whether it's a text box, a check box, a signature, an initial, anything. So you don't have to touch needs to sign usually. The only time that you may change this permission is if you wanted to add somebody at the very bottom of the signing order. Let's say that we're sending it to an assistant, or once everyone's done, I want to just send it straight to the listing agent. Like once everyone's done, I just wanted to go straight to them as soon as everything's signed. You can add in an extra person, and you can add them in by their name. So we'll just say this is the listing agent, and we'll just say this is their email. And it's just a scenario of an example. This could be anyone that's getting a copy. So we can make it so that buyer 1 and buyer 2 will sign it at the same time. And then we can make it that once they're finished with signing everything, it just goes straight to the listing agent. They just get a copy. They don't sign anything. They just get a copy. So yeah, that could be anybody. That could be an assistant or a transaction coordinator that you wanted to get a copy once everyone's done signing, so they get a notification. I'll take that off. Do you have any questions so far before we move on? Okay, cool. I'm watching the chat box. All right, so at the very bottom is the easy part. The very bottom is, what do you want the email to say to everybody? DocuSign does give you the option to send everyone separate emails. So if you wanted them to get their own separate emails, I want to tell Cinderella one thing and Prince Charming another. Under More, there's an add private message option, and I can add that for both of them. So I can make it so that, hey, Cinderella, here's the offer we talked about. Give me a call with any questions. And Prince Charming, I can either just address them personally, or maybe he needs to know some other piece of information. A great example, again, would be something like that buyer's financial information or the seller's disclosure, seeing as only one of them fills it out. So maybe that's where you send a private message to tell the first person, hey, you're going to be the one responsible for filling out the seller's disclosure or for filling out the buyer's financial information. Let me know if you have any questions. Like, they would get a different messaging. So that's really up to you, but it is an option that's in there to send everyone private messages. All right, so if we want all of them to get the same message, we would just fill it out down here, and everyone would get the same one. All right, so we're going to hit next. This is the fun part. Okay, so next brings you to the very last step before you send it out for signatures. When you're here, this is where you check to make sure that everything that you had already filled out in the in documents, you had already typed up your contract. Make sure that everything's in here that you need. If you miss something, like you made a mistake and oops, I forgot this entire box, you can go back. So let's do that first. You can go back. So I forgot to put the list side in this completely. So I can go back to the Documents tab. So we're going to go back. I can save the work that I've put in so far on this envelope. So I can hit Save and Close. I can go back to Documents, go to my Agreement of Sale, fill that out. So let me see. I'll just put a little bit into it for something for us to see. Okay. Look for that I have now completed the whole box section that I needed to. I can save the changes that I've just made to this document. Go to envelopes at the very top. There we go. Sorry, I've got a bunch of envelopes from other trainings. So this one over here, that's got that gray bar that says draft, that's dated for today. I can go back to that. That was the envelope that I had started and saved. So here I already have it named. I already have the document I want in here. I've already added my recipients, and I had already written my email. I hit next. It will update the document with those changes. So let's say that, in that scenario, I'd gotten to the first page and realized I forgot something. If it's something that you've already like dragged and dropped a bunch of boxes and signature boxes and made these changes and strike throughs and all of that, if you had added signature boxes or edited with any of these pieces here, that would be saved in the draft. But as you can see in this box, now all my listing agent information is in here that I had added in the Documents tab. So if you're missing a lot, that's the better way to do it, because then it will stay saved on that form version where you can fill it out. Okay, so with the Agreement of Sale, so if you go page by page, the initial boxes at the bottom of each page will be on there, and that's because we chose pre-tagged roles and we had those. We had our buyers already in our Details tab. So all of that's showing up. So your initial boxes are going to show at the bottom of each page. On the very last page, it should be like this one. Next one. All of this is already going to be here, and that's because we chose pre-tagged roles. Let's go to page, should be 7? Yeah. Yes, okay. Here's where things get a little bit different with DocuSign and the agreement of sale. Some people with dot loop, what they used to do, because dot loop would have the agreement of sale and it would have on both sides for the inspections. It would have initial boxes on the elected side and initial boxes on the waived side. So what people would usually do is just go in and delete off the side they didn't need. So it's kind of the same thing with DocuSign. Here's where the difference is. So let's look at these. You see these text boxes and they're shaded in. It's like a solid yellow and a solid blue. And then these ones down here, they're white and they have a yellow outline and a blue outline. So it means that those are marked as not required. So these ones that are solid, they are marked as required. These ones that are white with the outline, they're marked as not required. So that makes it so that if I did nothing to this agreement of sale and just sent it out, it means that my buyers could go in and initial whichever side was relevant to them. Because if they were both marked as required, they would just sign both sides the whole way down the document. So you can kind of handle this a couple different ways. You can leave it as is, but make sure that you communicate it to your clients to say, hey, make sure you're selecting the correct side and that you're both doing the same thing. Or you can delete off the side that isn't relevant and make the side that is required so that they don't miss it. Because the way that DocuSign works is that when they get it to sign, it jumps them page to page just to the places that are required of them. If they don't know they have to stop on this page, they're not going to. So they'll just breeze right on by it and DocuSign won't tell them they need to do anything because it's not marked as required. So let's do it as an example. So let's see, home inspection, they're going to elect that. So we're going to take the side that they want. If I click right up here in like the left side right above, I'm going to click down and I start dragging, it drags like a dotted line box around it. So when I let go, it selects both of them, just saves me a little bit of time. I'm going to mark them as required and it's going to shade them in. You're going to want to make sure that you're changing the ones that are sitting here and not laying ones on top. Because if I'll do this one as an example. If I just add new boxes on top, for Cinderella and Prince Charming, they get stuck underneath of each other and they'll sign the wrong one. Like they might accidentally sign the not required one and then DocuSign will keep telling them they're missing a field because the required one's like stuck behind it. So don't do that. Don't just put new ones on top, edit the ones that are on the document. So for home inspection, they're electing it. So we selected both of those. We marked them as required. Now we're going to go over to waived. I'm going to click right above this, drag over, select both of them, and then just hit the delete key on my keyboard, and off they go. All right. So let's say for wood infestation, they're waiving that. So we're going to go ahead and select both of these, hit delete, and then over here we're going to make that field required. So we're going to click a little bit above, drag, and hit required. You can also do, it's really whatever you have preference for. I'm more of a drag and dropper, but if you prefer to like click one, hold the shift key and click the other, that's another way to choose more than one. So let's say they're going to waive that one, the deeds and zoning, and we're going to make the other side required. So does that kind of make sense as we're going down? This one. Yeah, okay. So we're just deleting off one side, making the other side required. So this is going to make it so this little bit of extra time is going to make it so that they don't miss this page and you don't have to go back to them later. All right, so at this point, and then the very last page, let's go to the very last page. These are also marked as not required. It may be a good idea to make these marked as required too. It's things like confirming that they got the consumer notice, confirming that they got the buyer's estimated closing costs, that they've received the deposit money notice, lead-based paint. So those first three, that should be true. So we'd mark those as required. Lead-based paint is going to be if applicable. So if it's not applicable, then we can just delete it off. If it is, we're going to select them and mark them as required. That's just, like I said, that's just going to make it so that later it doesn't come down to compliance and you're missing all these initial boxes. So if you take that little bit of time up front to make them required before you send, it's going to make things a lot simpler. All right, so at that point, our document would be ready to go. So we would just hit send and off it goes. Let's get into, do you have any more questions on the agreement of sale before I move on to the next thing? Okay, cool. So I'm just going to back out of this. I get too many emails from DocuSign. Leave that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to actually bring in, we'll just use this one. Okay. So I had already done this before and signed a couple of the documents. So let's pretend that we had sent off that agreement of sale for signature and my buyers have now signed it. Here's what I was talking about before. Now I have two versions of the agreement of sale sitting in my documents tab. So I have this blue form version that I can edit for the next offer if this one falls through. And then I have this one that has this green check mark. It says signed, and it also, the name of it is the same thing, your standard agreement for the sale of real estate signed. That is a flat PDF version that's going to have the signature boxes attached to it. Here's where Cinderella and Prince Charming had signed off on the agreement of sale. So I have now two versions. One's the signed one by my buyers, and one's the one without signatures that I can always go back and edit. Once you start to get documents signed in your room, it can get a little bit cluttered. And every time you send out for signatures, you get these certifications for each of your envelopes. What I like to do is create folders. It makes compliance a lot easier. So I'm going to show you the tip for that. I think especially once you get like deeper into a transaction, it makes keeping things like organized by time frame simpler. And then when you're uploading it for compliance, like worlds easier. So we're going to hit actions. We're going to choose add folder, and we're going to start organizing this transaction room. So we're going to make a signed docs folder. All right. And I'm going to move, I had my buyer's agency, my consumer notice, and my agreement of sale signed. So I'm going to go ahead and check off all three of those. I'm just checking off next to those. And I'm going to hit move at the top. Where it asks select destination, I'm going to choose folder in current room. And then it's going to show the folders that are in the room. Room docs comes in automatically. So when you create your room, room docs just shows up. Anything that you create above that will show up in this list. So all I created was signed docs. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one and hit move. Now you have, let's get a refresh. Okay, now you have all your signed ones, nice and organized, and then all the rest of your documents separated. It also allows you that, let's say that we've got all these documents filled out and I don't want to have to look at the form ones because we don't really need them anymore. I can just nest that folder and really just focus on the ones that are signed and come back to this really if I need to. Same as Dotloop, you can archive documents. So if I right click, and I actually already archived these, so let's hit on archive. And then I think I archive these too. Okay, let me go ahead. Typically in the room, so there's a little drop down at the top, and it says all documents in it. Well, it depends. Usually it says active documents, which would mean anything that hasn't been archived. So let's say that I wanted to archive this certification. I don't need it. I don't want to look at it. So we're going to right click and archive. Now it's hidden from my active documents, which is usually how the rooms default. If I want to go back and view my archived documents, I can view just archived by clicking this drop down and choosing archived and looking at just the ones that have been archived. If I want to see just everything, the archived ones and the active ones, I can choose all documents. It's going to show me everything. So you get a couple different options with that. But now I have them separated. I can nest this, and then I'm just focusing on my signed documents. let me show. This folder is going to come into play because I'm going to show you how it makes compliance easier. But we're going to wrap up with things inside the room first, and then I'll show compliance. So let's say, I actually don't need this. We'll just take the agreement of sale to keep it simple. I have my signed agreement of sale by my buyers. I have our offer, whatever, however many documents that is. I want to send that to the listing agent. So I'm going to check off the box next to the signed version of the agreement of sale. And at the very top, there's an option that says email. This email, I'm going to actually send to myself so you can see what it looks like. It just sends them a PDF. You do not use email if you want anyone to e-sign. They will just get a copy. It comes through as like a secure link, and then they're able to download everything. So if this is multiple documents, it makes it easier for them to get it in a nice, neat package. So this is just a simple way that while you're sitting in DocuSign, you can just email it off to wherever you need to really quickly. So let's go ahead and select that email. I'm going to send it to myself so that we can see what it looks like. I can write the message. We'll say, hi, listing agent. Here's our offer. Oh my goodness. Okay, that would be the message that I want to send to them. These are the documents I'm sending. I'm going to hit send email, and then I'm going to bring my email over here. Okay, so it comes from you via DocuSign. So it came in as the person, like the from person, says Caitlin via DocuSign. One or more documents have been shared with you. That's going to be the subject. And then in the email, this is where it says who it's been shared by. It will show the name of your room, so keep that in mind. And then it says view this document. Okay, this was just one, so that's why it's just one in the list and a download. If it's multiples, it'll show as many documents as you sent them in the same way as a line item with a download. But if it's multiples, it'll also have a download all button at the top. So if you sent them like 8 different documents, they have an option as download all, and they can just download it as one big bundle if that's the way that they like to do it, or they can do it one by one. But it does give them a nice link that makes it simple. So that's how you can email off from here to the other side of your deal. And then the last thing we're going to go over while we're sitting in our transaction room is changing the name of the room. So let's say that our offer has been accepted for 123 Enchanted Lane. We're under contract. I want to change the name of my room. It's going to make it easier for me to find later because all these different names just gets confusing. So we're under contract. We want to change the name of the room to be the address. So we went back to details. We're going to hit edit. And we're going to change the name right here at the top. 123 Enchanted Lane. And if this was a listing, you should have just started with the address from the get-go. So this won't be as much of an issue. It's with buyers that we're putting in offers in all these different places, and honestly, we're under contract. So we're going to hit save. And that changed the name of my room, so it makes it all consistent. All right. Do we have any other questions while we're in DocuSign transaction rooms? Otherwise, I'm going to show you a couple things in Command for compliance. All right, cool. So we're going to go back to Command. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page because it's been sitting there stagnant as I've been making all these changes in DocuSign. So I want to go ahead and refresh it and catch it up. Okay. So we want to change in the Documents tab here. I had already uploaded these, so let me go ahead and remove them. Okay. So I had made those nice, neat little folders in DocuSign for my signed documents. I had signed in there my buyer's agency, my consumer notice, and my agreement of sale. Now, while I'm in Command, I'm in Documents, and I want to upload those documents for compliance and submit them to the Market Center. So I'm going to start with my buyer's agency. If I hit Add a File, and I choose DocuSign, it will pull everything that's sitting in my transaction room. Here's the difference. If you don't have the folders, it has it just as like one big mess. And you could use signed as a keyword if you wanted to, but it as the transaction goes on, you may want to have consultation signed documents, under contract signed documents. You might have multiple offers. It will show the archive documents in here, or at least it used to. Maybe it doesn't anymore. That would be nice. Ooh, I think it stopped doing that, so that's great. But it can get a little bit confusing. So where it comes into handy with the folders is right here to the right. It says select folder. Root folder is like the room docs folder, the one that comes with the room. It just automatically defaults to it. Signed docs is the one that we made. So now I'm just looking at just my signed documents in one nice little bundle. So I can easily find my buyer's agency and hit assign. DocuSign. I want to see just my signed documents. Here's my consumer notice and hit assign. We have now finished our consultation folder of documents, checklist of documents. So at that point, we would hit submit to MC, and off it would go for Carissa to check for compliance. If everything's good on your documents, we didn't miss anything, there's no signatures missing, the dates are all consistent, you'll get a green approved next to it. If something's amiss, it'll have next to it a red rejected. And then it'll also have a little message box that when you hover over it, it'll tell you why. So whether that's initials missing on page 2, or this number isn't consistent with another document, it will have a little message that tells you why. There's also a really nice one that if something's missing, it will also be tagged in red and it will say missing. So where that really comes into play is in this under contract checklist. So we're in consultation, let's go to under contract. For buyers, consultation is pretty easy. Buyer agency, consumer notice. But once you get into under contract, that's where you have a much longer checklist. So when Carissa goes to check your files for compliance, if there's something missing, like your buyer's estimated closing costs, she can tag it as missing to bring it to your attention. To say, hey, here's the things that we still need. So those are what will happen when you submit to the market center. So you'll either be approved, rejected, marked as missing, and then, like, let's say that one of your documents is rejected. So for whatever reason, a signature box was missing, we fix it in DocuSign. You'll be able to, in these 3 dots, once it's been submitted, you can't remove anymore. So once it's been submitted, and even if it's still waiting to be checked, instead of remove, it will say replace. So for any documents that something was wrong and we need to put in a new one, you'll be able to replace, bring in your new one, and then resubmit it. And this button will change to say resubmit to Market Center. There's one other thing. Oh, okay. So any questions with that, with the folders, with the adding documents for compliance, with what it looks like? All right, great. The other thing that I'll say about compliance is that when you log into Command, you will get notifications. It'll be under this little bell. So if you have, it'll say, you have new files to review. If something's been rejected, it'll say, like, you have files that have been rejected. So you will get notifications in this bell in Command. All right, last thing that I wanted to go over, and then we'll just open up for any other questions. Last thing I wanted to go over is in the Details tab in Command. So in DocuSign, we went and changed the name of our room because now we're under contract. So we just made it consistent. Just want to do the same thing in Command. So now that we're under contract, we want to make sure that we change the name. This was a buyer opportunity. We want to change the name of the buyer opportunity to be the address. It makes it so much easier as we move forward. To find documents that have been submitted, to look up commissions, to check to see if, like, on our end, if anything's missing, for you to find it later, because it'll get kind of confusing to try to remember who's attached to what. So in Command, in the Details tab, we hit this little pencil. At the very top, we can change the name of our opportunity. So I changed to be 123 Enchanted Lane. Let me go ahead and make that complete. You can. All right, so now it's changed the name of the opportunity, so It'll make it so that as you're looking at it through the pipeline or in the all opportunities list, it'll change what it's labeled as. Instead of the client's name, it'll be the address, which is going to make it easier for everyone. All right, that was the end of the things that I had. Was there any questions that you had, John? Anything you saw when you were like messing around with it, or as you were going through it that you wanted to see again? Yeah, it usually will make more sense when you're doing it real life. Because when you're doing it with like examples, it doesn't. It's not as real. But we can sit on it like when you have when like you have an appointment and you want to get your documents in order. We can sit one-on-one with me or Trish, and we